Vulnerability sounds to others like truth, and it feels to us like courage. Great quote by Brené Brown, who really explores the role of vulnerability in our lives and how courageous we have to be more vulnerable. This is Walking Your Talk, a personal development podcast about leadership, authenticity, and courage. I'm Carolyn Taylor, and I've been working with organizations on how to change their culture for over 30 years. But this is much more personal. If you want to be known as someone who walks your talk, then this podcast is for you. In this episode of our series on courage, I want to go beyond what we classically think about as courage, which is what we're prepared to do, and start looking at who we're prepared to be and the courage it takes to really be yourself, even if that does make us a little bit vulnerable. For most of us, an equal or even greater courageous step than doing something courageous is to be courageous enough to show some vulnerability. And showing who we really are, sharing some of our imperfections, or talking about those elements of ourselves that we're less proud of, really does require courage. So why would I do that? Why would you do that? What are the benefits of doing that? The benefits of this sort of courage is that you evolve trust in others. You build relationship. You trusted them, and they trust you back. And that emotional connection is so valuable for anyone you want to have around you, the people you work with, the people who work with you, the people who are led by you, the people you do business with, and of course the people you have outside of work as well. Some of the most powerful team-building experiences that I've run involve asking a team to tell a story which we entitle, "If You Really Knew Me." What we get from that is something that has shaped somebody that people at work don't necessarily know about. And personally, this has been a hard one for me. I'm much better at the taking risk element. That element of courageous feels exciting mostly for me. And even when I am outside of my comfort zone, I can sit with that fear. But showing weakness or lack of confidence, that's more difficult for me. I know my husband, for example, knows how scared I get before a big seminar. Other people don't tend to see that. They think I've mastered it. But the people who know me really well know that that's not the case. So that story about "if you really knew me," some of the things I've heard people say have just been so moving. And suddenly when someone talks about something like that, they talk about their relationship with their father, how tough that was, or growing up with an alcoholic mother, or being at the effect of racism in their life. And suddenly you see the choices that they've made going forward that have then shaped them and made them the amazing people they are today. But that there's a bit of shame about talking about that at a piece, and so we tend not to do it. But when you do it, there is a bond that forms between people. So that's what I want to talk about this week in this podcast. But I want to say that I think this podcast needs to come with a bit of a warning, because whilst you can do courageous things kind of on your own, you can only be courageous in a vulnerability sense with somebody else present, so in relation to someone else. And I think the first thing to think about with this is, do you have to choose carefully who and when you do this with? Putting up an ugly photograph of yourself on Instagram and then losing a whole lot of followers or getting a whole lot of rejection, maybe not the right place to start this journey of vulnerability. Because you can't control the other people. You don't know the audience. You can't trust the audience. Having conversations with one or two people where you start to reveal more about yourself and where you've got a reasonable chance that those people are going to come back and do the same with you is the place to start. So my advice as you explore this element of courage is to start slowly and start with people where there is already some level of trust and see how you go. So it does come with a warning label, this one. So in a work context, I think one of the big opportunities that I see is the willingness to talk about mistakes. Because as we know, people have tremendous fear of failure, but they also have a lot of shame about having made mistakes. And I find that in many environments, in many cultures in organization, there's a kind of a, we're going to be macho, I'm great at everything and I've got everything handled, which sits at the base of so much interaction with people. And yet, if you want to shape the culture in any way, this is one of the areas where you can make a really big difference. Because unless people are sharing about their mistakes, how can you pursue excellence? Just imagine if you were able to have an environment where getting the best outcome or pursuing excellence was more important than people always looking good. So that's actually what this is. I have my bright painted shield up and you've got your bright painted shield up and my shield talks to your shield and we never really connect. We just look good to each other. Or we drop down a couple of levels, we are prepared to be a little bit more vulnerable, and we start to help each other. We learn from each other. And that takes some courage. And that's the way you start lowering your shield. You don't have to start lowering your shield by telling your innermost secrets, but just talking about, I had a meeting, don't think it went really well, this is what I did, this is what I didn't do, what would you have done? Those kind of things can make such a difference. We were in a meeting the other day in my team, and we were talking about the successes and failures that we'd had in the last year. And somebody who never normally ever talks about their failures actually started to do that. He said, I was working with this client and I think I made the wrong call. I didn't quite get this right. And it was so wonderful to hear him say it. It's like, oh, hello, here you are. You're like me. You have your struggles too. And just that little bit of vulnerability, I go, okay, I trust you more. So here's the courage exercise for this week. What would it take for you to feel really courageous? What would be a big step for you to talk about with your colleagues? Would it be about mistakes? Would it be about things that you're anxious about? Maybe about things you don't have an answer for? Something about your past that you think is relevant that people don't know and they would be better off knowing? So practice opening up with your colleagues, and here are some language suggestions that I have. I don't know. Just take that phrase and use it from time to time. I love it when someone says, I don't know in a meeting. Just go out there and listen and see how often people do that. It's such a powerful statement. And then, you can take it further than that. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think we should do? I really don't know on this one. Or, I got this wrong. I tried this, it didn't work. Can you help me with this? I made a mistake. Or another level down is, I apologize. I shouldn't have done that. All of those represent the first steps of being courageous with somebody and showing yourself to be a little bit vulnerable. So when you go into this, remember that everyone else around you also makes mistakes. Everyone else around you has also got these secrets, these shameful pieces they don't want to talk about. Everyone else around you has had failures. So what you're doing in doing this is you're showing other people, you're opening your kimono just a little bit, doing a little flash and going, here's me. And they inevitably go, oh my goodness, you're just like me. And that builds that trust. It builds that relationship. It makes you somebody who others want to follow and engage with and work with. So this is a very different type of courage. It's really about being authentically you and what that does to your relationship with others. So I encourage you to have a go and try those exercises this week. And next week, we're going to look at the third element of courage, which is the courage to speak up, to know something to be true and important and perhaps not in line with your values, and to be willing to speak about that and raise those difficult issues and have a difficult conversation with people. So join me then for another exciting session on courage. Thanks for being with me today.